Hi, Arun.
Hey, sorry, I was on mute. Hey, Andrew. Hey, Jeff. Hey, Phil.
Hello.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, well, we'll wait another couple more minutes so you guys can join today. Well, it's 5 after, so we can go ahead and get started. I'll share my screen. I sent out an agenda prior to the meeting. So really today, if you look here, recap from last meeting was pretty lightly attended. But really we're still focusing on the webinar, and since we didn't really have a quorum, we didn't bring up the host access proposal discussion. So was hoping to do that this week, but still not seeing enough folks joining. I think at this point I'm gonna ping some of the Intel folks, and AMD folks and others to see if, next week if they're going to be able to join and talk about the host access proposal. I'm wondering if folks are just seeing the webinar slides and checking out because it's not really. I mean, they may not feel it is as critical for them to join, but I really would like their participation. So anyway, yeah, so really primarily today we'll spend some time on talking about the webinar slides, and then that'll probably be it if we don't get any other folks joining. Any comments or questions? Otherwise, I'll switch over to the tracker. So the tracker, pretty much today, this is what we're planning to talk about. So the main thing is, so next Tuesday is the first webinar, and so that has to be finalized this week. And so, in tomorrow's meeting, we'll work on finalizing it. And then, so actually next week we would finalize these because the following week is holidays, and as soon as we get back, we're gonna have the webinar, and then, and then soon after the webinar, we'd probably do a debrief. And then, so we'll see if we get folks joining next week to talk more about, the host access to the FPGA. This I'm just going to push off. Honestly, I've had to kind of put them in the back burner a little bit, but I'm hoping, when we get back, we'll have some time to show the demo where I'm at on that. One thing I'm going to bring up is that, on the 17th, I mean, that week is getting close to holidays. Wondering if we should cancel. I put may cancel. I may take the time off as well. Some of that, I may still be there on the Wednesday, but like the Thursday and Friday, I'm pretty certain I'm taking off. So I'm wondering if on the 17th we should cancel or not. We don't have to have an answer today, but just bringing it up and see if folks what their thoughts are on that. So just we can talk about it as it gets closer. It's no big rush to try to make a decision.
That's the
17th
17th. Okay.
of December. So I mean, people may be checking out that
Yeah.
week. So
That's right. Yeah.
yep.
Oh,
Okay.
are you planning on canceling the Wednesday before Thanksgiving?
Yeah, it's already canceled.
Okay, sorry. I was looking for that. Okay, got it.
Yeah, I'm gonna be out, so it's canceled.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, that whole week is gonna be a slow week, so
Yep.
a lot of people are gonna be out. So. Yep. All right, so that's where we are on the schedule. Basically, the slides are up on the are here. I was going to walk through these today again, and talk about the dividing up of some of the, here, I'll put that over to here, like the webinar, dividing up of some of these slides. So as I go through it, we'll kind of get to these different areas and see if people want to, if they want to go ahead and take ownership of some of these slides. I mean, a lot of the content's there. It's just kind of cleaning it up and, making a decision as to whether it should be condensed or not. But here I'm going to walk through the slides and And unfortunately on using the Google slide, you know, slides thing, it kind of mangles them a little bit. I try to fix it some, but yeah, so I'm just gonna walk through it, spend some time doing that today, you know, and then you know, as well as, you know, finalizing it next week. So still looking for 2 other speakers. You know, I'm asking, you know, please, you know, certainly by next week, we need to nail down who are the other speakers. We get 3 speakers, we're good. I mean, if more people want to speak, that's great, but you know, kind of thinking, you know, when I look at the you know, the tracker, I was thinking I'd kind of do these sections here. So, you know, kind of looking for people to pick up, you know, owning the you know, taking that section and hopefully speaking to it. So yeah, so just kind of walking through this here on these slides. I'm actually going to take the you know, what we're developing for the on the FRU Discovery Boot webinar, and I'm going to basically plop that in here. Kind of working with Tim on that, and so I need to ping him today about, you know, let's finalize them tomorrow, and you know, and see, you know, we think that there's some you know, areas here that, you know, we want to sort of summarize and really try to drive home the benefits. So that's kind of where I'm looking for Tim's help to you know, sort of crystallize the message. So we'll be working on that probably tomorrow a lot. The rest of this is stuff that we took from, you know, the previous, you know, OCP summit. And this, you know, this thing does this, it kind of mangles it a little bit. So that's better. So all of this is pretty much just the, I think I might have showed that before. Added this interconnection between specs slide. Doing that, but so once we kind of get to here, you know, this is kind of where I'm looking for, you know, does somebody want to speak to or own the, you know, this here, kind of start talking about the interfaces, and then, you know, if anybody wants to speak up, you know, please let me know.
It makes sense for me to talk to you more than just one slide.
Yeah.
If you want to add me plus or minus that in the flow.
Okay. Yeah. So, you know, we can adjust this flow. You know, some of these things like, you know, pesty, you know, we can pull up. And in fact, why don't I do that? You know,
Yeah, I can speak to, you know, LTPI and all of those interfaces down to mux control and LED control.
okay. All right. Like, you know, LTPI. Yeah, that's great. These guys here. All right. So, I mean, does somebody want to kind of talk about the power management, these IP blocks, a memory map, just kind of go over the FPGA interfaces? You know, because this is a good section here to hand off to, and then after this, you can hand off to Jeff, and then, you know, these other ones could be, you know, handed off to somebody else.
Yeah, or if somebody wants to take both of those sections, we could, you know, move them together.
Yeah, I mean, we could. Yeah, it's just kind of, this area here kind of makes sense to talk about, you know, these other ones. You know, it's just from a flow perspective. You have the interfaces. This is kind of high level, but the memory map and the IP blocks that kind of gives you it's like this kind of this is kind of part of the introduction here. As a matter of fact, somebody could even take the FPGA deep dive intro as well. You know, like these here, and then, you know, they can hand off to Jeff for here. And if somebody else wants to pick this up, great. You know, if not, I can talk to it. It's either way is fine. Because it's kind of some tail end stuff, tail end items.
Yeah, I can see how power management, cooling, and telemetry would fit together.
We could do that. We could pull these up in here. Oops. So yeah, that would be fine. And then I guess do you mind doing the general? I mean, it's really not much. It's almost an afterthought type of a. It's
Sure.
just the general. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's just the general GPIO. Probably won't even take more than probably take less than a minute to mention. All right, so this is good. So this is kind of a good block here. If you know, we don't have to have a decision today. I mean, certainly by next week we want to have, you know, an owner. And like I said, a lot of these a lot of the content's there. It's just adjusting it. You know, like here, it's just really, you know, starting here, the specification contents. Yeah, this kind of needs a little bit of cleanup. This way this thing, I don't know, I don't like the way it is kind of goofy. I'll clean it up later. But yeah, you know, going just highlighting the interfaces. It's a little hard to read, but if I can expand it up a little bit. I want to say I'm not a fan of this template. It gives you less space, so you're missing this here. You know, it's a big chunk of space. But you know, to a certain extent, it lists it out here, so you don't need to. You know, this just gives you the idea of, you know, how it's kind of interconnected to things. A memory map, it's pretty simple. Here, I'll move this up. You know, so it shouldn't be too much to describe. You know, it just gives you a, you know, and maybe we need the section or chapter in the spec. It might be good. You know, mention that. What's back there? Good afternoon. Looks like Todd just joined.
Hey, sorry I'm late.
No worries. Yeah, so we're basically going over what we're gonna do for the webinar. We've kind of divided up some sections here. And kind of what we were thinking is, you know, I would sort of introduce, you know, provide the introduction, you know, basically the, you know, similar problem statement to what, you know, you presented in the you know, the OCP summit with some additions. There's some things we wanted to sort of, you know, kind of, and this is going to be a little bit of more of a condensed version, and I'm not sure we're going to use all these slides here, because we're also going to provide a lot more of this in the Brew Discovery Boot webinar, which is next week. So, but what we still want to have some of the information because some people may have skipped that. So some of the things we want to do is just kind of outline, you know, what are the interoperability challenges and what are the benefits, you know, kind of summarizing it after going through this, you know, and kind of, you know, I'm not sure in this particular slide deck how much of the, you know, the plug and play light we want to, you know, we'll probably touch on it, but go into more of those details in the Brew Discovery Boot webinar.
Yeah, I guess my take would be, yeah, the plug and play light would be better, I think, for the other webinar.
Yeah.
I always think it's good to go through the motivation at the beginning. It doesn't take long, like you're going to do. Just, hey, here's why we're all here. They've probably seen it, obviously,
Right.
if they're at the webinar. But I agree with you. Just go through. Here's the benefits, and then.
Right. Yeah. In this version, we're saying this is part 2. It would have been good for you to see part 1, but if you hadn't, here's the, you know, the overview, the problem, you know, and then, but we really want to, you know, jump into this as much as possible because this is the new content.
Yeah.
So,
agreed.
So what we're kind of dividing up, Jeff is, you know, graciously accepted doing some of the speaking here for this section. You know, so we're looking for folks to pick up some of these and we kind of swizzled the divide. So the slides are kind of a little bit, I need to kind of, sort of refactor a little bit to move some items up. But it was really just these two things. But basically looking for somebody to talk through, really starting, probably starting here would probably be the, specification deep dive, just to kind of introduce the spec and, what's the high level of the contents. And then, start talking about the interfaces, memory map, there's some discussion that, we'd have a few slides there. This lists out the IP blocks, and then from there you start digging into, the power management IP block. Somebody can talk, and we could have more than 3 speakers if we can have somebody that just talks about power management and goes from slide. This is actually a big section, and it's quite a lot here. So and then the system recent one's pretty. I think we can think about condensing these, but the problem is it's actually such an important IP block. Spending some time on it, I think, is a good thing. And like you said, I'm trying to think about how to best to condense down the the first section, in because of the hope that people see the first webinar. So this basically you see here, it's sort of this being a a bigger section. If somebody wanted to take just these 4 and somebody else wanted to take these 4, well, that'd be fine too. So happy to take in volunteers. But would definitely want to nail this down, who's speaking and who's doing what, by next, the next session, because that's it pretty much, that next session. And then it'll be, the Thanksgiving, break, and we're not having a meeting on that Wednesday for Thanksgiving. So we would want to finalize this, next week.
So who would we say is our, on the call here as our experts in these various areas? I would not consider myself an expert in a lot of these. I could talk to them, but probably be better if we had somebody that really, is really making the sausage in these various areas. I don't know who that is though.
Well, let folks speak up, if anybody wants to, has some particular, to a certain extent, like this area here, this is still pretty high level, so if somebody wanted to take these 4 and then hand it off to somebody to talk to power management, that might be a good thing. And to go ahead.
Can you go to the cooling and telemetry pages and let me see what those look like?
Yeah, and that, like I said, I had to move. They were in the back here. Can move those up, or was planning on moving those up. So the cooling is right here. So this basically talks about some of the use cases, and here's an example use case. It says here's the, for basic fan control, PWM TAC presence. You have more advanced fan, this kind of talks a little bit about more advanced fan control, where, it could be autonomously, controlling, 1 or more fans over I2C. And then, it could be, something more complicated, and it could also be controlling things, peripherals, as well, fans on peripherals. So like a fan board. So there's some different things there, DLC, we could state, we really haven't, fully, fleshed that out. We're still trying to decide what DLC control would look like. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so what we're trying to do here is just introduce in the cooling area, here are various ways we could define it, essentially. We haven't defined anything yet, but help us out with, what do you guys think about? Okay.
And like the register set, this is it. We say, look, we're trying to, get industry feedback. So this is an area where we could, say register still TBD. I was kind of leaving it up to, whoever takes the ownership of the slide. And it looks kind of ugly because the way this thing, yeah, but we could state here just, as a matter of fact, that might be just a good idea now, still defining CSRs. I mean, that's it. That's all we really have here. This is, you take this, plug this in here and just take the slide to backup. I'm thinking yes, because we
Yeah.
got a ton of slides.
I
Because
think
really,
so.
we don't really know what we want here. I mean, we don't have it defined. We have a general idea of some use cases, but it's just we're kind of in the vague territory of, is this something people want or not? It's the cooling and telemetry is kind of the same boat where, even the LED control block is like, it's this. We don't really have it. I'm thinking, let's just do that now, Register map overview is, we're still defining the CSRs and we need industry feedback on use cases.
So I could do cooling LEDs. Show me the telemetry one quick.
Yeah. So it's basically the idea here is you have some onboard sensors on your HPM, you have a shared I2C bus, maybe there's a peripheral that, it could be shared, it could be, not shared. Well, actually probably would be shared, but you could say, well, I'm gonna let the FPGA autonomously harvest whatever remote sensors there, on my behalf, so I don't have to sit there and poll it or whatever. And then I could just collect it, sort of aggregate from the FPGA at some later time. So this is kind of the block diagram here where.
So I really like that idea actually, and it's one of the things we were proposing. So I can do this telemetry one as well.
Okay.
So you got, I got three. I'll do cooling, telemetry, LEDs.
So I mean, Jeff, do you want him to take? You said you.
Oh, he can do it. No, if Jeff's got LEDs. No.
Okay, you can have it, Todd.
No, I don't. No, I was just trying to help. You got it.
But this does. Okay, well, because
If it fits better with cooling and telemetry and power management, I have no qualms.
We can throw that there. I mean.
Okay, I can do it. That's fine. I didn't want to steal anything from Jeff.
Well, he's got a big chunk. These are like PESTI and SGPIO are sizable,
Yeah.
So I'll put your name down for these. Net. All right. And there. Great. Well, so we just need somebody to pick up this, especially somebody who's really, very familiar with the power management portion. That I think, because that's going to be the bulk of, that's kind of the biggest section in here. So, but yeah, like this. Okay, where was that? This actually. Yeah, I kind of think the same thing here. We could pull this up and then, and just basically say that, and you don't even need to talk about CSRs. This could just go back in the backup, and that cuts some slides. Are you good with that, Todd? Because it's a lot of slides.
Yeah. I think these, where we have roughly some definitions, but we don't really know what we want. I think just put that in the backup. We'll just we'll just ask for feedback.
Ask for opinions.
Yeah. And so you're saying there's one of these earlier. There's one next week even.
So next week is the Crew Discovery boot one, and so tomorrow we're going to talk about finalizing those slides. Yeah, the 18th.
Yeah. Okay. So
I could definitely need help there too. No.
Yeah, I'm booked all next week at a super compute, but
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's, unfortunately that, the problem is this is all jamming up into the holidays. And so we didn't want to, yeah, I know some people are gonna be at super compute, but, the following week is, Thanksgiving week. And then, we didn't want to have them too close to the Christmas holidays, because, so that's why we said the second for this one. We didn't want them to be the second and then, the 9th, and how you're
Yeah.
really getting, yeah. So
no, I think
it's
it's good to have it. I'm not gonna probably be able to participate.
okay. Well, that's
Maybe
fine.
But I think others, if you're just attending super compute, you can certainly
Yeah.
attend this while you're there. But
Right. And it will be recorded. So hopefully those
Yeah.
folks who are, aren't going to be able to join can at least watch the replay. I don't know when the replay is going to be available, but OCP is, it's through OCP, so it's managed that way. So hopefully, it won't be that big of a deal to get it out.
So I was just thinking, after you have that one, then that
Yeah.
might give us some information about how to organize this one. We can do lessons learned, or you can on
Yeah.
and then that should guide us the following week or
Yeah.
the week after on how to organize these.
Right. Yep. Hopefully so. So just jumping back up here. So, to here, the power management, system reset control, that's a very simple one. So this is the start of where, Jeff would pick up, LTPI, and Jeff, feel free to adjust these slides. This thing is goofy. And then SGPIO, this, I did put these protocol flow, flow diagrams here. I mean, I know it's a lot, but it is useful to kind of, and you may decide not to walk through the nth detail on these. I'll let that kind of leave that to you. But certainly, talking about the discovery phase, I think that's actually, since, it's not defined in any other spec, but in the plug and play spec, I think that's a good one to bring out. On the CSRs and things like that, you may decide that this is overkill and can go into backup. The GPIO's, list, it's really a GPIO, category list, really what it is.
Yeah, groups.
Yeah, or group list. Yeah, because it's just too much to list every single thing. I thought about it and was like, oh, that's kind of a mess. It's already a lot of slides. So like I said, feel free to, spend some time between now and next week to condense any of these down as
Yeah.
you see fit.
I mean, it's
I don't-
easier to gloss over some during the
Yeah,
presentation, but I like having them there for offline reviewers
Right.
after the fact.
right. So that's kind of a nice thing to have. Yeah, certainly a lot of cleanup here. Got rid of some of my borders for some reason. Yeah,
Yeah, the Google Docs translation's not always
just
perfect.
yeah, it's unfriendly. pretty
So
much.
once we get it polished,
Yep.
either in PowerPoint or what have you, I recommend translating it to a PDF.
Yeah, that we can do too. Yeah. Right. We will do that. But yeah, I'll let you polish this up. Pesty. There's a lot of content here. I definitely, but some of it's kind of needed. Anyway, the pesty area. One thing I added here, I think it's some, I put this as a note. If you can, I don't know what, maybe put a little snippet of the register for the power out and allow and the power policy bits, because that's not something that's in the pesty spec itself. So that's in the plug and play spec.
Yeah,
and it's
I
kind of a good,
associate those with the pick power
Yeah.
FlexIO stuff.
Well, it is, it's, maybe the best way to do it is say, hey, this is in the pesty, control register, but it's associated with FlexIO, which we'll be talking about in an upcoming slide. So I know, I guess it's sort of a, you can figure out a way to mention it's in the here.
Mhm. As part of the
And-
discovery process, you determine what it is and whether it
Yeah,
wants to be powered on in various states.
right. Right. So just kind of a mention, and I don't know if you want to put a little snippet here of the register or what, I didn't get a chance to do that, but then of control reg. And then you can talk through that, and how it relates. That's kind of a good unique thing. And then it's discovery payload, virtual space, and then this gets into the FlexIO, and this just gives you the architecture. I went and copied in, the snapshot pictures instead of, what was in the originally, because it just mangles it, and and you can't see anything in the Google sheet.
Yeah, can we get a little more contrast on that? The text and the image?
Yeah, I can do that. I'll work on that. Get more. Yeah, because in the spec it's kind of washed out, so I have to go back to the Visio drawing. I can go back to the Visio drawing. I don't know why I did it that way. It's just kind of, you get the text, black instead of blue. Or maybe make the lines less, less washed out. Okay, yeah, I can do that. So I'll take a little note here. Put a little comment. Fix diagram. Less. Okay. Easy enough. All right, next up is this. Again, this is got a lot of text and info in here, kind of jammed in these tables. So if you want to improve this, by all means, go ahead. And then, this is just talks about the alternate functions. You walk through some of the items in the table that are gonna tease out, I can make this better looking too. I mean, this is, some of the, we can think about, do we want to have also these CSR spaces in here, or just kind of allude to it and say, that's weird. There's like a line here. I was copying these things in, it got kind of goofy. Okay. Okay. Well, the point is, here, I'll just go back to this. You can decide, do you want to include some of these, or just say, in the description, register space divided into, by, target, pick power, for, actions. I shouldn't say pick power, I should say control panel. I think that's going to be it. Target divided by these different, XIO, pick power, control panel. You have some room here, you could probably shove that in there, and maybe that gets rid of a slide. So I'm gonna
This feels
say,
like the right level of detail for a webinar.
yeah, it's just we have, it gets to, we basically have 80 slides, so for an hour and a half. So I'm like, there's some places we can reduce down. We could try to do that. I'll I know it's tough because it's so much content. So I'll let you, choose, if you think you wanna, if we think this, if we still, wanna go through that with this slide or, and like you said, maybe some of these you just gloss over, and
Yeah,
and that
I like
that
having the
helps
data
me.
there,
Yeah,
but we
Okay.
don't have to talk to every cell of the table.
right. Yeah, like, oh, this is pick power, here's MXIO, we've got to divide into these sections. This is kind of, you know, and some of the feedback's like, hey, well, we've got these wide ranges, is that overkill? You guys let us know, because we, we're trying to sort of guess as to, there could be use cases where you have massive amount of, pick powers or massive amount of, I mean, we don't know. We're just guessing. So, all we can, look at on our own designs, yeah, I mean, there may be some, really large, 10U platform with lots and lots of expansion and blah, 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 with
Yeah,
lots of,
the question is this not enough? We would want to hear that pretty soon.
right. Is it too much, not enough? You guys tell us. I mean, yeah, we're just definitely, we're trying to get the kind of best guesstimate on this. So, anyway, so yeah, Mux control, this one's pretty small. And then I'm going to move the LED and the cooling and the telemetry blocks up. I can do that. And then, then this finishes up with this, which is just very, straightforward. It's just a bunch of, GPIOs connected to, to physical, it's kind of a little ugly, but I think it's the way this, anyway, you could absolutely clean any of this up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a little bit of a very short slide on the discovery process and say, hey, the other webinar, so I still have these to do, but I'm going to do that once I've got the, discovery boot, the free discovery boot slides done and finalized. Then I'll put something in here that says, hey, this is, really need to look at the other webinar, but, you can go watch the replay, but here's how it's involved in that. But if you want to know more, go over there. And then the rest of this is talking about the FPGA JSON. I'm going to talk through that, so this will be passed back to me, and I'll say this is kind of how it's structured. I'm going to give you, and I'll go to VS Code and open up, a mock-up and the schema and kind of just say this is at a high level, this is what it is. And basically say, look, we talked about this in the Brew Discovery boot, around the JSON for the HPMs and peripherals. If people are really interested in this, we could spend an entire webinar just talking about that and go into all the gory details there. This is just introducing it and saying, this is how you would, how you read it, this is how you'd understand at a high level. And then we'll go back and talk about, do we want to do another webinar? And, and here, this is related to the JSON file. This is how it's mapped in the, in the JSON. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the access methods, this optional patch mechanism, if there's time, the JSON creation tool, that we're working on. I'm probably going to put a little bit more content here. This is kind of light. So I need to do that. Vendor extensibility. And you've got the final schedule here. And, got a little bit of talk. So that's what I'm going to cover and sort of wrap it up here. So anyway, so that's where we are on this. Hopefully this is going to get a lot of folks interested, and we'll be able to get a lot of feedback. So we just need somebody to pick this up. you've, the next, few days, if you, think about it and say, well, you want to do it, drop me a line or, or go ahead and, put your name here or something off to the side saying, I'm interested in this, and then we can talk about who wants to pick any of these up. Yeah. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, for the other folks on the line, it might be good to send out a reminder to your, partners and suppliers to see if we can get attendance. We kind of did that, but try to remind some of the folks that are some of our suppliers, hey, we're having this webinar. It'd be great if we could get feedback. Be helpful if we got more than just us reaching out to these suppliers. Just my 2 cents. What are your thoughts,
Yeah.
Phil?
Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely want as many folks to, spread the word and, get, it's completely public. Anybody can sign up and, and can listen in. Yeah, it's definitely would want to get a lot of coverage.
Yeah, so I guess my suggestion is that, if you have some contacts, folks you think that would be really helpful to provide feedback on the spec, shoot them an email and say, hey, can you get folks to attend the webinar? That'd be great.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah. Well, cool. So, or any other thoughts, comments? I'll open the floor. The last bits here. All right. Well, yeah. So, I guess we have a few minutes here. I think, we have enough folks to talk about it. Let me pull it up. Let's see. We had talked about a couple times, maybe wasn't touched on last week, but I think the week before. I'm just going to shift gears to this, and so I think we'll just kind of show what we've got here. It isn't a very in-depth proposal, but it's a start. And probably what we'll do is we'll go ahead and I can throw this up on the Google Drive. And certainly a lot of room for adding content. So the host access proposal, really just want a common set of registers for FPGA to, to provide access to the host, some sort of a mechanism by which, basically, the host can get access to the FPGA, and then, trying to advertise the host access. I'm thinking via the JSON file, but if people think of other ways to advertise it, that's probably fine too. Architecture is pretty straightforward. I had some notes here I need to kind of clean up. But the idea would be, there's some bus that the FPGA has access. It may be an exclusive bus like I2C, or maybe shared. SPI could be eSPI, could be a number of different things. We're not precluding anything like PCIe or USB if somebody else wanted to. Not, so some of the things like eSPI slave, I was going to add to this list here, but the main thing is it's low level, so not requiring, some configuration by, the host, through, BIOS. We kind of really want to ensure that it's got early boot access. Provide some sort of a physical address decode. Then we're trying to well, how do you advertise the bar? how would bias, how does it know? Is it something that the VMC would provide to the host? The eSpy case, maybe a little bit more unique versus, like an I2C or something else. So there's a lot of, sort of considerations. I just kind of scribbled some notes here. But the idea would be it would have access, could be some exclusive registers that it only has access to in the VMC. It's not shared. It could have some memory map shared space. It could be a window in just the FPGA memory map completely. Could be vendor defined space. So really kind of opening the door for, whatever we think we want to define. And kind of want to make this, provide a mechanism to make this as flexible as possible so that, you want to have your own vendor defined space for whatever reason. It's easy enough to do. You just define it in the JSON file so the BMC knows about it. And then maybe that's how it communicates it to the host. Maybe there's some other way to get it, get that communicated to the host as well. And so I'm open the door for that. It could be something that the host silicon, once it knows the, what interface and where it's, how it's all mapped, that it can get the definition of the registers through this as well. So there's lots of different ideas, and really open the door to discussion there. Try to put some requirements. Maybe it's the JSON file. Yeah, add attributes. Could be in something in the HPM through that that provides the that if as long as the host can access that brew data, then it could see that okay, this is it gives you enough breadcrumbs to get from here to getting to the registers, and then maybe the registers themselves or something that's in there that gives you the rest of the breadcrumbs, so to speak. Other things here like talking about the FPGA JSON, certainly have a description of that this new IP block, that's the host access IP block. A list of CSRs that that maybe they would be shared with the host. Yeah, it's exclusive versus shared space. We'd have some things need to once we decide on these things, need to mock it up in the JSON files. But these are just a bunch of questions. What are the ranges? How do we define these in the host access CSR memory map? What does that look like? And really don't have anything else. So everything's just kind of empty there because we don't really have it defined. So would be great to get suggestions if anybody has any suggestions on this, on how on the definition, then really open to that. It just kind of gets the ball rolling on this, so I'll put it out on the Google Drive. Any questions, comments, thoughts? So yeah, between now and next week, when we're not thinking about the webinar, I guess if you have any thoughts or talk to folks in your own organizations to see what do you think you would like, how if you are using a if your the host is communicating to your FPGA, there's some CSRs, anything there would that you can just discuss and share, that'd be great, and you can let us know how you'd like to see it being used. Just definitely open to a lot of suggestions here. So But yeah, I don't really have anything else for today. Like I said, next week we'll finalize the slides and hopefully get some good learnings from the other session and good to go. Anybody have anything else you want to cover for today? I don't, like I said, anything else to go over? Okay, well, we can wrap it up a few minutes early. Like I said, I'll put this out on the Google Drive just to start, in the proposals folder, and we can start kind of defining things and getting it forward, moving it forward there.
All right, sounds great. Thanks, Phil. Talk to you
Great,
next week.
thanks everybody. Yeah, we'll talk again next
Thanks,
week.
Owen.
And all right, so talk to you later,
Yeah,
and
bye.
hopefully tomorrow.